Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Julianne Meyer, and I am the host of Own Your Wellness, and I'm excited for today's guest. You know, she is an amazing soul, and she and I have a lot in common in that we don't think that science and spirituality have to be one or the other. And so we're excited because we're going to have such a fun conversation today. So without further ado, let me introduce her, Dr. Egypt Iredia. Hold on one second. There we go. Hello, my new friend. How are you?
I'm well, thank you, Julia. How are you doing today?
So good. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while. You and I have been keeping in touch a little bit via email, and I've done some research about you in the meantime, and I'm just really excited. So, I would love just to ask my normal question to tell about yourself, a little bit about yourself and your own wellness journey.
Great, thank you. I'm from the UK. I grew up there. I went through training. I went through conventional medical school, so I'm a medical doctor. But just through a series of like personal explorations, undergoing my own personal health transformation, using various tools, I started to just question a lot of that kind of conventional medical paradigm, and it started to explore alternatives. I was introduced to things like sacred herbalism, lifestyle medicine, nutrition, mind body modalities. And, long story short, it got me to the path of naturopathic medicine. And that was the main reason I actually moved to the US to become a naturopathic physician. And over time, I've like added other, I guess, healing elements to my healing toolkit. So, like, in summary, that's like my background.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. Because on this show in particular, I'm always saying I don't ever want to knock Western medicine. However, I don't feel like it's the only and full complete answer. And there's just so much more out there and available that can't be answered by in that little box. And so I love that you have that knowledge and you have so much more knowledge as well. So I'm really excited because I just want to know how did you was it kind of like when you started on your own, I don't want to say healing journey, but your own journey in discovering that, hey, you know what, this works, but there's more to it? What were some of the best things that you've discovered on this journey for yourself?
Awesome. Yes. And I'll borrow that word for, in a sense, it was a healing journey. It was a journey of transformation and healing. Some of the, I guess, the main things that I discovered or rediscovered was just the inherent healing power of the body itself, like the body being its own pharmacy, its own physician, really, because true healing is done primarily by the body. And, like even when I speak to people, work with clients, I say like physicians, natural therapists, body workers, practitioners, they're really just guides that are providing you with the tools, the information, the resources for you to support your innate healing ability. So I started to recognize and deeply appreciate just like how powerful each of us are as powerful healing organisms if the body and our environment is made optimal to support that process. So it was a big paradigm shift for me from like, oh, we have to do things to the body to, treat it, to we have to support the body and provide it with the right tools, and it kind of knows how to fix itself or to regain balance in itself. So that was a main like, I guess, element or paradigm I adopted.
No, I love that so much because I've been through a lot of traumas, personal traumas in my life. And there was a time when I definitely felt like I needed an antidepressant and an anxiety medication. And it worked because it got me through the darkest moments in that, time. But the point about that is I'm not doing that now. And I'm not putting it down for anybody who may or may not need it. I'm just saying, for me, realized I need to learn some skills to be able to deal with this without adding some sort of other element that throws everything else in my body off. Because
Yeah.
when you add something foreign in there, now all of a sudden it has to deal with that too. So I always kind of thought, well, if I can just sort of figure out how to change my environment and the way I'm thinking about things, then I can heal myself instead of taking something to heal me, because it didn't really heal me if once I take it away, I have issues.
Yes. Yes. No, I completely resonate with that, Julie. And I started to even think about like what we see healing as, and because something you said there was like, when you were on the antidepressants, you did get a lot of benefit from it, but you felt like other parts of yourselves were thrown out of balance. And how I see true healing, I call it deep healing, is when we are restored to a sense of balance or a sense of wholeness. So sometimes we can have modalities or medications or substances, even supplements, that can help with symptom control, but then we feel out of balance. They throw off our natural sense of balance. So are we truly healed in that sense? So again, healing to me is about wholeness and balance. And I like to use the word well-being rather than healthcare, you know, because it just fosters that sense of softness and deepness and completeness to the picture.
Well, the other thing too, and like I said, I don't want to, because there's going to be a time when I'm going to need a doctor for something.
All of
And,
us.
I mean, it just is what it is. But I've always felt like, because I've lived in other countries, and the healthcare system in the United States is very different than in other countries, especially Europe or especially Canada, because I lived in Canada for like 6 years. And, it just seems more like here it's more geared towards sick care and like managing symptoms as opposed to actually healing. But a lot of Americans don't really understand or see that because they don't have anything to compare it to. So they don't know that there's other options out there. What are your thoughts? Because I know that you haven't always lived here.
Yes, well, that's very interesting. Like, you have those different perspective. I mean, just growing up like in the UK, and I'll just say a little bit of my background. I'm like second generation West African. Moved, my family parents moved to the UK, and then I grew up there. So, like within my family and culture, I guess, things like nature-based healing, things like healthcare or healing was a bit more broad. It was to do with like how your environment was and the plants and the food that were locally grown. So it was not just about taking care of yourself when you were sickness care, as you said, but like just doing little things all the time to foster health. And the UK sort of healthcare system, I'm sad to say, I feel it's very much similar to the American system, or it's moving more in that direction than, say, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, where it's more very focused on like pathology control, symptomology control, rather than optimizing health or like promoting wellness and true healing.
No, I think that's such a great observation too, because I don't know. I just feel like there's so much money in, especially in the US, because that's where we live. Or we both live right now. Is because I feel like there's so much money involved that it's not necessarily people focused as much as money focused, and so therefore we're not necessarily going to be open to eating a banana to heal you as opposed to taking a pill to heal you. Because there's more money in a pill than there is in healthy food, for example.
No, like totally. And these were some of the, I guess, the practices or the understanding I came to encounter within conventional medical practice that just, I guess, disillusioned me in a way. I started to really dig into issues like, or topics like health economics, and realized that overall healthcare systems in westernized nations are businesses. And like you say, eating a banana or just eating healthier foods that cannot be patented, or there is not coming from a fancy lab, there isn't much money to be made in that. It's almost like we have systems in place that is driven by sickness. If most people got well, a lot of doctors will be out of work, hospitals out of work, administration out of work. So it's this tension that exists between trying to make people better, but then you can't make too many people better, because then your industry would be like, defunct. So yeah, it's curious.
Exactly. So something that I really want to like steer the conversation towards is, we were talking a little bit about environment and, for wellness, that sort of thing. And with COVID in particular, since that's, the elephant in the room, it seems to be dying down a little bit, but, a lot of people had to change how they live their life and how they show up in the world. And, like being on the computer as opposed to meeting in person, for example. But what
Yeah.
I'm thinking about is, a lot of people, they started making bread. I don't know if that was just a California thing, but like everybody was making sourdough bread. And it was like, this creativity started to come out. And I just absolutely, that part of it, I loved and adored. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit, or let's open the conversation into how creativity can actually help with your wellness as well as your quality of life.
Excellent question. Well, I guess I come to this area with a little bit of a bias, because I am a writer and a poet. I enjoy expressing myself in that way. So, in a way, I've experienced personally the first-hand benefits of it. And in working with people and clients as well that incorporate more creativity into their life, I notice a difference. And for me, how I see it, it's like creativity is powerful medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Creative engagement, and I say engagement, which can be you either participating in a creative work, like work of music, beautiful pieces of art, watching a visual art or dance, or you're actively creating something, like you're making a painting, drawing, writing poetry, whatever. However way you engage your creativity, I find that, like, on many levels, it can foster deep healing and a sense of well-being. I'll give some examples. For instance, we take just a practice like writing or journaling. It doesn't even have to be anything like super structured, or like using writing prompts or anything like that. But it's a means for us to clarify our thinking and unravel our thoughts and share our insights with the world, if we choose to share whatever we write. But even if we don't share it, just little things like journaling for our own self-care, or journaling or writing, keeping a diary or writing notes, that has
Mm-hmm.
been shown, like the data just shows that like therapeutic journaling in that context can really help with even things like minor depression, anxiety issues, mental fog. I find that a lot because I work with some clients with chronic fatigue syndrome and hormonal disturbances, women, and they tend to have a lot of mental fog. And mental fog can come with overwhelm. We're trying to keep everything in our heads and schedule different things all in our heads. But the act of just taking it out and writing it down, putting it down on paper, like parking it almost, can help with a sense of mental clarity. And for me, mental clarity is a major key to feel a sense of well-being. We feel greater
Mm-hmm.
senses of control and balance in our lives when our minds are clearer than when they're like, scattered and overwhelmed. So that's just like a few aspects. I mean, I love creative living, so I could talk about this forever, but that's just like a few ways that like I've seen and I know creativity to foster well-being and healing.
Well, something that I was thinking about is, you said that you're a writer and you're a poet, and I love that. But what made me think about something that comes up with a lot of people is they're like, well, I don't know how to write, or I'm not an artist. I don't know how to be creative. They have this idea in their mind that it has to look a certain way, it has to be a certain way, it has to show up a certain way, without giving themselves a chance to just realize, hey, this should be fun. This is me just
Yes.
creating. Like I know people that will play with Legos, for example, and create little houses and things like
I
that. And
know.
why not? So, I love that idea of adding that element in, because, and tell me what your thoughts are on this one, but I feel like as humans, we are creative beings, whether we realize it or not. We are creating something. So to do it on purpose and choose how we're going to be creative can be also another way to have that sense of control and a sense of purpose in our own lives. What do you think about that?
Oh no, beautifully put, Julie. I also truly believe that humans, we are instinctively creative. If you just look at human history and all the like technological and cultural advancement that we have had, they are in of itself just creativity expressed in different
Mhm.
ways. And something that I do in my practice is I incorporate human rewilding into health and healing.
Mm.
In that, I mean like getting back to not only natural living or eating natural foods and using, natural supplements, but also just like, incorporating natural human practices. And I truly feel like, if we kind of think about how we would have lived even hundreds of years ago, would we have like sat down for hours a day consuming vast amount of information either on Netflix or social media or on the internet? Would we have done that? No. And when we do get into these states where our minds are almost mentally stagnant and our bodies are definitely physically stagnant, we have health challenges. But when you look at a lot of traditionally creative human pursuits, and it could be things like birthing babies, raising a family, working the
Mhm.
farm, cooking is a creative activities, like really mundane, basic human creative activities. We find that when we engage in those set activities, there's a more sense of connection to ourselves, to
Mhm.
our environment, and there's a deeper sense of meaning and contribution. And I mean, just kind of weaving this back to health, because I'm a big proponent for mental wellness and mental well-being, not only mental health in terms of like having a psychiatric diagnosis, just general mental well-being.
Mhm.
I've noticed, and in my clients and myself, that when we have deeper senses of contribution and meaning, which we can get from engaging our creativity, we feel a better sense of well-being. Our minds are more, I guess, balanced. We feel like
Mhm.
agents in our own life rather than like being controlled by external agents. So it provides a sense of healing on so many levels. Like I say, I think it's powerful medicine.
It is absolutely. And I like the idea that you even mentioned cooking, for example, as creative, because it is. And it's kind of funny if you just change your perspective on a few things, it could turn into something completely different. Instead of being a chore, it can be a sense of expression. And when I say a sense of expression, first of all, how you put the food on the plate could be artistic, or your sense of expression could be that you're showing love for yourself and your loved ones,
Yes.
by cooking a meal for everyone or even just for yourself. Because I do believe that a lot of people don't cook for themselves.
I know, right?
They will cook for everyone else, but they'll be like, "Oh, it's just me," and I'm just thinking, okay, would you say that? I mean, why don't you treat yourself better? I know I'm guilty of it too, but
Me too.
but I just love the idea of showing myself that kind of love and, setting a beautiful table and sitting down and enjoying either, you know, some music or if I'm by myself or the company that I'm with, just something to really enjoy the meal. I
Yes,
love
no, I
that.
think I love how you talk about like just expressing yourself, create, like with the cooking analogy you gave, everything is a form of expression. But
Mhm.
in a way, like how you think about mixing the ingredients together, presenting it on the table, how you lay it out, or how you set the ambience that you want to eat in. It could be music, it could be turning down the lights, like whatever. And that is, again, you mentioned self-love. When we engaged in more creative pursuits, we are almost like showing up more in our lives to be like active
Mhm.
participants in our lives. And for me, like showing up more in your life is a form of self-care, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. It's a form of like attesting and affirming your worth and affirming your contribution in the world. So it's self-care. Creativity, we can use creativity to our benefits. We can use it to our self-care in so many different ways. And also engaging in more, I guess, traditional creative activities like listening to music,
Mhm.
having more art surrounding you. We could decorate our homes with artworks, go and see, visit museums, read a beautiful book, like traditional things that people consider as artsy or creative. I mean, forget the science or the metaphysics. It just feels good. If it feels good for our bodies, right?
Well, at the end of my life, I don't want to sit there and say to myself something to the effect, I made it through. Like I want to enjoy as much as I can, as long as I can. I don't want to think I made it. I finally made it. I endured this. I think that the thing is a lot of people, and I have experienced a lot of loss, more than most people, including my father, who's 77 years old. I've experienced more significant loss in my life than he has. And the thing is that has shown me that life is really precious, and it does not last long. And it might not last as long as you think it will. So, and unfortunately for me, sometimes it's kind of like, I don't want to sit down and maybe watch a TV show, because I'm like, at the end of my life, well, am I glad I watched that TV show? I need to find a happy medium. But, it's kind of like, shouldn't you just sort of find ways to love how you're living while you're living, instead of,
Yes.
I love that so much.
Sure.
So we are about to go to commercial break, but when we come back, I definitely want to talk to you more about the spiritual side of things, because we've been talking, not that creativity is scientific, but I think it's such an important part of health and well-being, and it's so overlooked. Is there any other last little thoughts that maybe you see some of your clients deal with, the resistance to maybe, having that creativity allowed in their life? Because a lot of people feel like, somehow it's like a self-worth issue, or it's a time issue, or something like that. What do you see? And what would you say?
Yes, for sure. I think there are a couple of barriers to, I guess, engagement and more creativity, or owning people's creativity. And one you alluded to earlier was what people thought creativity actually is. A lot of people, and people that I've worked with, they associate it with being artsy, and they think they're not artistically talented, so they can't be creative. Or in their standard day jobs, they might be in a more office-based job, the more kind of linear thinking type job, and they're like, oh, I'm not the artist, I'm not creative. But so it's kind of reframing, or trying to unpack in their mind what they think creative is, because creative is really just expressing yourself, bringing out whatever is in your mind and in your heart onto the world, and just sharing it with the world. That's all it is. So you can be creative in a myriad of ways. So I find that's definitely a big mindset hindrance to some people. And another major one would be some people see it as indulgent, almost I don't have time for this, it's a waste of my time, and there's more important things to do than, I don't know, journaling or doodling or something.
Yeah, exactly. But something else that I've noticed too about creativity, and because I have started 2 different businesses, and that can take up my whole life if I let it. But the thing is that I've discovered, and I think a lot of people miss, is that sometimes that creativity, that moment to journal, is the key that unlocks the other stuff in your life. So to take that time for yourself, and to give your brain a second, all of a sudden that answer that you can't come up with pops into your brain.
Yes.
I just wanted to mention that. But anyway, we do need to go to commercial break. So we're going to be back in just a moment.
Okay.
I know everybody's having just as much fun as I am, but as I mentioned, we do need to go to commercial break. But before we go, I'm going to say hello to everybody who is watching us live, and we will be right back after these messages. Are you someone who is struggling to move forward because you suffered a loss? Maybe you're even finding it difficult to complete the most basic tasks. Are you looking for a way to start enjoying life again without feeling guilty or the resistance to do so? Spiritual life coach Sarah Stockham saw a need for people who haven't learned how to grieve without putting their entire lives on pause. And so she created a program that solves this issue called Choosing Life Right Now. This program is simple and you can do it on your own. If you are ready to learn how to feel your grief while still being able to smile, to honor the sacredness of what took place as a loss, and yet still continue to live with joy, and if you'd like to take care of your whole being with grace and love, then I'd like to invite you to experience her new program called Choosing Life Right Now. Sarah is currently offering her program for the promotional price of $77, but it won't stay at this price for long. To learn more, check out her website. The address is on the screen.
When drug or alcohol addiction take over, things begin to disappear. Your friends, your family, and eventually, you. Recommended by Dr. Phil, New Method Wellness can help get your life back with individualized treatment plans for dual diagnosis clients. New Method Wellness provides the most highly credentialed treatment in a safe and welcome environment. Call New Method Wellness for your free consultation and ask about our national accreditations. Together, we can put the pieces back together.
Welcome back, everyone. If you're just joining us now, my name is Julianne Meyer, and I am the host of Own Your Wellness. And today we have a very special guest, and her name is Dr. Egypt Iredia. Let's bring her back. Yay! So, you are working with clients right now, correct?
Yes.
And if somebody's interested in speaking with you, they can find you at this website?
Yes.
Amazing. And I know that you mentioned you're a writer. I know that you happen to be a poet. And so people can find some of your work on here as well.
Yeah, so there's a link to my poetry via my homepage.
I love that so much. Now, I love the name of your website too, Manifesting Alchemy, because alchemy is such a powerful word.
Thank you.
And I would love for you to talk a little bit about how this became part of, considering that you have such a different educational background to start with, from going from a regular, in like the United States, we call it just a doctor, to manifesting alchemy. You wouldn't expect, that. So I'm just curious how this came about.
Sure. So right from a young age, early teens, I've always been kind of like inclined towards the more esoteric side of life, spirituality. I read a lot of philosophy, both Western philosophy and Eastern philosophy in my early teenagers. So I've always been curious about the, I guess, metaphysical, beyond materialistic world. And by the time I went through medical school, and I kind of pushed it a little bit to the side, I was like, okay, right, I'm gonna like focus now and put my like linear thinking on and go through this. And that lasted not very long. And so I've always had this kind of more leaning towards the more intangible world. And for me, it felt like there was a lot of truth and solace and serenity to be had when we do connect with our spiritual sides, whatever our faith or spiritual leanings might be. So as I just went on with my life, I guess I've started incorporating more self-growth, self-discovery practices. I started encountering teachings or seeking out teachings. And I just found out that the more I was living aligned to my values, aligned to my spiritual center, the
Mm-hmm.
more beautiful life became. It's like it's the law of attraction, if people believe that, or positive thinking, whatever. But I just feel like ultimately everything comes down to frequency and energy. And when we inhabit a space where we are just raising our own frequency to a place that we feel a sense of harmony, we feel aligned, life just becomes better. And sometimes we don't necessarily see external shifts, but it just feels like it's working, So I noticed that in my life. And just because I am a physician and a poet and I do the metaphysics, I kind of merge everything in my life. And it came to me the name of manifest and alchemy, in that, like, really what I'm trying to do is craft the best life. Like, I don't see a
Mm-hmm.
division between, oh, I'm a physician, so I can't do this. To
Exactly.
me, it's like there is no specialty. The specialty is life. So I'm trying to just manifest the best alchemical life possible.
I love that so much because, especially in the United States, it's kind of like we get stuck in these boxes and these titles and, like I'm a mother or I'm a physician. And it's like, it doesn't leave room for anything else. And if it doesn't fit into it, it's almost like we try and tap down that part of us, even though it's still there. And I just love that you're able to combine everything and realize that it's not it can all be together. It doesn't have to be just one little part, or it doesn't have to look like a particular in a particular way. It can just be whatever is going to be best for you or best for whoever you're working with. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That's so amazing. The other thing too that I just feel drawn to say is, if you really want to think about spirituality, for example, if and science, if energy cannot be created or destroyed, then it's still there no matter how. It just takes on a different form.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it doesn't mean that just because we can't prove it or we can't see it necessarily doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Like, I can't see air necessarily. Sometimes I can, but usually, it's like you can't really see air.
Yeah. Mhm.
But it doesn't mean I don't believe it's not there, just because I can't
Yes.
see it. So I'm curious. You mentioned about being in alignment with your values. Have you noticed too that when maybe things aren't going so well in your life, or everything seems to start to be a challenge, that's more of an indication of, hey, something is out of alignment, as opposed to my life is horrible and I need to make this drastic change? And I mean, you might need to make a change, but
Yes.
I always feel I've turned into thinking like, okay, this is a sign that something's off within me.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so how do you help people recognize that within themselves?
Yes. Great question. I think being in touch with our values really is core to living a blissful life. I guess I put it that way, because just the lives that we live in the Western world, I say, because that's predominantly where I've grown up. It's very
Mhm.
fast. It's very busy. It's always like go, 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 and growth, 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 growth. So people don't have so much time and space to even connect with what's important to them.
Mhm.
So they live in like a reactionary mode where they feel out of balance, but then they think, oh, I have to do something externally, or I don't know, like go in another program or course,
Mhm.
or buy a bigger house or something. But like you alluded to, I found that a lot of it, there's a quote, I can't quote where it comes from, but it says, like, if your inner life is still in balance, it will reflect in your outer life. So a lot
Mhm.
of the work and growth comes from us just tapping in and connecting with what is truly important with us, important to us, and bringing that out into the world. And as a physician, just because I'm very, the word holistic, I think, gets thrown around a lot. It's like I'm a holistic practitioner. You see holistic practitioners sometimes, and they're working very much on the body, but they're giving you like herbs and supplements and stuff, but it's still very much the body focus. Whereas to me, I see holistic as mind, body, spirit, heart, and environment, because we are affected by our environment, be it our work environment, our home environment, and our relationships and our community. That is truly holistic. So when I found, like, in working with people, that sometimes, like you mentioned, it's when they feel like a sense of discomfort, it's really sometimes they haven't connected to their own truths, whatever that might be, and I noticed this from a vulnerable, I guess, position in my own personal life. When I was young, I was very much on the rat race, like the road to success, whatever that meant. But I hadn't defined really what success meant for me. I had kind of borrowed onto what others or society told me I had to do to be successful. But I noticed when I connected deeper with myself, I really aligned with living a simple, slower, more contemplative or reflective life, rather than that life where I'm so go, go, go. I have no space to even breathe, let alone think, So yes, reconnecting with our values, or just listening to our inner selves, I think it's at the heart of a lot of dysfunction, especially emotional, mental dysfunction.
No, you brought up something really important too, and that is, what's important to you as a person. Because, like, for me, I can't even tell you how many times people will ask me if I have kids, and I'll say no, and they'll say, "Oh, well, how old are you?" And I'll tell them, and they'll say, "Well, you still have time." And I'm like, if I wanted to have kids, I would have had kids. Just because that's what people do doesn't mean that's what's right for me. And, I would have been a great mother, but that wasn't what I chose. And there's nothing wrong with that. Or the fact that, like, I've lived in Canada and Italy and in New York City and California, and like all these other people are like, well, why do you move so much? And I'm thinking, why don't you? Why don't you move, as opposed to me being a weirdo? Like, like, I want to live as many lives in this life as possible.
Yes, I get it. You're speaking my language, and it's, and that's the thing, because you connected with who you are and you are doing you, and ultimately, I say, really, isn't that what is important? It's just like, and I'm a big proponent of authenticity and like just choosing your own path, because I've kind of been the black sheep in a black family. Basically, I kind of do things differently, and I went my own way. But ultimately, like, if you're living a life that you're not in connection with your truth and your own authentic calling, then it's not, to me, it's not a very rich life. So I'd rather just live a rich life rather than a fake life.
Exactly. It's almost like being an actor, and it's, the role of your life. So how do you, do you want to be authentic, or do you want to be who everybody else thinks you should be? Because they all have their own agenda too. And I'm not saying that people don't love, us or whatnot. It's just that maybe what they want for us isn't what we want for us. And that's okay. Because if everybody around, and that's the thing too, it's like, you can't please everybody. So you might as well try and please yourself.
I know, right?
No, I love that so much. So I guess my next question would be, what are some physical types of signs or maybe emotions that might come up for somebody who is not in alignment, or somebody who is there? Maybe there's just something in their life that they need to take a look at. What are some things that tend to show up that you see?
So I see a lot of fatigue, a lot of sort of, and not like chronic fatigue syndrome, but just tiredness. Tiredness is a big thing, because there is a lot of energy we gain from things like movement and the food we eat and things like that. But I found, and I've noticed that a lot of the energy to get stuff done in life and to feel that joie de vivre comes from passion and comes from emotion. So when we are aligned and when we're passionate about whatever lives we live, that passion lends us more energy to do life. So I find when people are, like, again, not aligned, there's just tiredness. They wake up. Obviously, sometimes there's some physical issues that are contributing to that. But once they've, looked into, maybe done some labs, seen some practitioners, but their tiredness almost isn't resolved, I start looking at things like, I go deeper, like, let's look into your soul. Are you like not using your own voice? Are you not expressing yourself? Is there something you wanted to do when you were younger that you didn't quite live out, or something you're regretting? And I find that when people tap into that, there's like a source of energy that just like comes into their life. So tiredness is definitely one. Sleep dysfunction it's a big one as well. And also like just scattered thinking, like mental mental emotional fatigue, I guess. So scattered brain syndrome is what I call it. Like they're just a sense of feeling lost or baseless, or in life. That's a big thing. Especially I see it more in women, but then that could be because I do naturally see more women, so I don't really know. Or men are not as expressive, maybe. I'm not saying, but just generally. So those are some of the things. And a big thing I also notice is a lot of hormonal dysfunctions, because our hormones are very much connected to our emotions, our emotional pathways. Our hormonal system and our nervous system very much are involved in the regulation of our in the regulation of our bodies, our sense of well-being. So a lot of hormonal dysfunction, and it's on the rise in society. I mean, there's a lot of other things going on, like toxins in foods and the water, the air, and everything. But I see a lot of hormonal issues.
That's fascinating, because as you're talking about that, I was thinking about me. And I was like, oh, that explains why I had these physical issues at those points in my life. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. But okay, so there's something that you mentioned that I really want to touch on. And you said a source of energy, that passion. And, there's a lot of people out there that will say, oh, and because they haven't experienced it, they don't really understand what we're talking about. Yeah. And I always like to give an example. And it is that, okay, let's say you are dog tired. It has been a long day. Your kids are acting up. Your boss yelled at you. You name it. Your dog peed on the rug. I mean, you named it. It's just like you just want to go to bed. Yeah. Then all of a sudden, and you're just tired, right? All of a sudden, you get a call saying you want a free trip to Europe, all expenses paid. You're telling me that you wouldn't instantly be like jazzed up, super excited, bouncing around, celebrating? Yes, you would. And that is like this unlimited source of energy that is available if you can tap into it. Yes. It's always there.
It is. Isn't that wonderful, right?
Yes, absolutely. So what I'm wondering too is, are there ways that because sometimes when sometimes when we get stuck in like negative thinking patterns, or, go back to our old behaviors, things like that don't serve us. Yes. What are some things that people can do that maybe might adjust where they're focusing their energy and focusing their thoughts, so that they can go back and change that frequency?
Sure. A great question. Well, there are a few things. I would say one thing sometimes is to really take a look at our environment. I mean, our immediate spaces, and see like what is maybe an easy way that I can use to shift the energy of my environment. Because I find sometimes, and this is, I think everything we talk about comes from personal experience as well as professional experience, clinical experience. But sometimes you're just tired. You feel like a hot mess. You just like, you didn't have a good breakfast, just too much to do already. You feel a hot mess. You just don't have that intrinsic motivation to, like, I don't know, go and like do a workout or organize your closet or whatever. You just don't have that within you. So sometimes shifting the focus from what you can physically do with your body to your environment, like, how can I make this environment at least a little bit more pleasing to me? And I noticed like little things, sometimes like I'll do little things at home, like I'll light a candle and incense and just some relaxing music, right? Just open the blinds, let some fresh air and some sunlight in, just little things like that. Make my bed. I start the day making my bed. So I feel like I have a sense of control. Like I I've done something today. I've made my bed, just that. And then when you inhabit the space of your environment, because again, it is an exchange of energy, the sound waves coming from the music, the sense of smell is being nourished by whatever scented candle or incense or whatever you lit up. That starts to kind of shift your frequency in a way. And the fact that you're moving the focus away from your body and away from your thoughts into optimizing your environment. I think there's a lot to be said about environmental wellness. We can use our spaces as therapeutic tools of healing if we know how to work with them. It's like when people go to a spa, the soft lighting and the music and everything's all
Yes.
pretty and proper, and they feel relaxed just stepping into the spa, and there's a reason for that. So that's like one way, I guess, that's accessible to probably most people. It doesn't have to be lighting candles. It could just be picking up the floor.
Yeah, exactly. Any sort of there's dishes in the sink. Well, that was an interesting thing for me, is I was so out of tune with my emotions that the way I knew I was upset was if I left dishes in my sink. And I'm like, oh, there's something going on with me.
I know what you mean.
Like, whoa. But, it makes me think of what you were saying before about, your outer world reflects your inner world.
Yes.
And sometimes this is what I'm hearing, sometimes to help your inner world along, you can change your outer world a little. I mean, I don't want people to focus on changing the outside, but, like you said, lighting that candle, turning on that music, opening the blinds, picking up something that can help that internal energy, that internal whatever so that you can make the next better choice for yourself and can sort of climb your way up the ladder of energy.
Exactly. And also, like, just bringing this maybe back to the spirituality we mentioned, or the metaphysics aspect, there's like a lore, I guess, or yes, a lore in metaphysics that says, as above, so below, as within, so without. So our inner lives reflect in our outer lives, like you mentioned about, like, when you feel out of balance, the dishes that are still left there. So we are constantly interacting, like our physical bodies are constantly interacting with our environment. So as within, so without, as without. So those laws are reversed. So as without, so within. When you have a calm, serene, organized, clean space, it gives you a sense of calmness, serenity, cleanness, and organization, and vice versa. So there's just these little tricks that we can almost work with. Like I try to get people to just see wellness is different from, it's beyond just your body.
Yes, that's what I'm always saying and always preaching. It's like, one is I want people to feel empowered with their own self and to make their own decisions, because we have all of the answers within us. We just need to learn how to hear.
Yes.
And maybe learn tools to, answer whatever the issue may be inside us. But I just love that idea of, that you've mentioned about environment, because I'm always saying how I don't care if you eat the perfect diet, have the best exercise regimen. If you're in an unhealthy relationship or your work environment is toxic, you are not healthy. I don't care. I don't care. You are not healthy.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah. And I just love that you encompass all of that, because like you mentioned before, even holistic practitioners tend to focus only on that body aspect. Yes, they're not doing necessarily completely Western medicine, but that doesn't mean that they're even taking into account your soul. I would say that I am, having a human experience. So the biggest part of me is my soul.
Me too. No, most definitely, yes.
I'm just happen to be in this meat suit right now, and that's about it. But anyway, so I just want to pop up your website again, because we're almost to the end of the show. But I do want to say, so how do people work with you? Do you like do a one-on-one? Is it a group sort of situation? How does that work?
Great. So I'm in the process of putting up my healing offerings. I'm creating some signature programs, and that will be up in hopefully in a few weeks' time. But I worked with clients mostly one-to-one, but I am also open to work with people in groups. But for the most part, it is through one-to-one consults, and I also do coaching sessions as well.
And then also your poetry. I'm excited. I haven't read any yet. I have to be honest, but I am excited to, because I just want to hear what you have to say. I'm excited. So I can find this through your website as well. I know
Yes.
that in the show notes, we also put the direct link to the poetry, but I just want to make sure for those who are watching live that they can find you as well. I love that. So what do you think, since you are a practitioner of alchemy, an alchemy practitioner, let's just call it that. I'm just going to give you a new title.
You can take it.
What do you think is one of the more common things that people tend to miss or overlook in their wellness? I know we've talked about environment, but I just for me, I just feel like a lot of people are so busy trying to be like human doings as opposed to human beings, that they kind of miss sort of like that whole just existing and being, and that they're enough as they are. But what do you see as being an issue?
Well, yes. One big thing for me, I would say, would be slowing down. Would be slowing down, because a lot of people come to me with this paradigm, like, right now, tell me what I need to do and give me the protocols, give me the recommendations, and let's go. And even if we look at a lot of the diseases that are existing now, especially the chronic illnesses, a lot of them are contributed by stress, are contributed to by just busyness and living a very hectic life. But when we just slow down, we naturally create more space to actually even like have more healing, space to like cook healthier meals, space to like juice or read a book or take more naps. When we just the simple act of slowing down releases so much mental energy and space that we can actually heal deeper. So I would say it's like simplifying and slowing down life, rather than trying to like do too much or take like 20 supplements. Just take a couple of supplements, incorporate some, change your diet a little bit. So it's this, like, we don't have to do really that much. And sometimes, like you alluded to, it's like remembering that we are human beings. We have to make time for embodiment, make time for stretching or yoga or breath work practices, very slow, reflective, body-centered practices like that. But sometimes they can be the most healing practices for us.
I love that. Something that I was just thinking about while you said that is, a lot of us live in our heads instead of our entire body. And so, that's where I love the idea of meditation and, even maybe Tai Chi for some people, just something that gets you to stop living in this one little spot. There's so much more like that your body's telling you. And, I've always thought that it can be in conjunction with everything else, your emotions, your soul, it's all. But if you're only stuck up in here, then you're gonna be like linear and critical and all these other things, as opposed to like, that gut feeling, for example, or my heart skipped a beat. I mean, we talk about these things all the time, but we never really give it much mind when we're actually living. It's like, okay, my body is telling me what's going on. I'm like having a physical representation of what's going on energetically.
Yes.
So, no, I love that. I love that. So we only have about 2 minutes left. Do you have any final thoughts or anything that you want to share with the audience before we wrap up?
Just to remind people that you are powerful agents of healing. You have a lot of healing tools that can be accessible to you, nature, sunlight, fresh air, food. Just to realize that, and to just step into your own healing as best as you can. It takes a little bit of courage, but it's totally worth it.
Oh, I love that so much. Oh my goodness. And on that note, I think we're going to have to wrap up because we're at the end of our hour. But I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show today. I've had such a blast, and so is our audience. So I want to say thank you for them as well. And hopefully you'll come back on the show again.
I'd be happy to. Thank you very much, Julie.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You too.
And as I mentioned, that is all the time that we have. So it's time for us to go. But I hope you enjoyed. Actually, I know you enjoyed it as much as I did. So until next time, we will see you then.